Hey there, everybody. Checking in with you on this Wednesday. I got a lot to get to today that the guides have given me to, sitting here for about 30 minutes. I always do that to prepare and get my notes together, get my thoughts together before I come to you, try to make some sense. And if you are just landing here, I'm glad you're here. I hope you stick around. I'm a Fefe with Touch by Tarot and Beyond, and I do a lot of political readings. I am also a former newspaper journalist, so I try to get some facts straight. Harder to do these days, right? But I try to do my best with that, and then we go to spirit and get deeper insights. So glad that you're here. Woo, some things to get to today. Let's start out with, how about that primary in Georgia, right? The what's his name, Sean Harris, 37%. He came out on top of the Trump endorsed candidate. What's his name? Clayton Fuller. He got 35%. Now, that is a tight race. That's why we've got a runoff coming up on April 7th. That's what I want to take a look at. But the fact that this is for some of you who may not be familiar, of course, here come the fire trucks. Sorry about that, y'all. Let's let them get by. Hope everybody's safe. All right. So this is for Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat so that's a big deal because we know her district in Georgia is blood red, right? Ruby red, beet red. So the fact that the Democratic candidate edged out the Republican candidate, this Clayton Fuller, Sean Harris is one to watch out for. And interesting, the dichotomy between the two of them, from what I understand. So Fuller is apparently a former prosecutor, or maybe still prosecutor, but he's that ilk, right? But Sean Harris is a retired U.S. Army, I think it was. I want to make sure I get Army officer, retired Army officer, and a farmer, right? Farmers right now, we know, because of what's happening with oil and fuel, farmers are getting hit. They are upset. They are like over it already. And so in Georgia, this Sean Harris, as a farmer, he's connected to the people. He's apparently really, really likable, just doing a bang up job. So first thing I want to see is, like, is that district actually, is the Marjorie Taylor Greene district gonna go blue? Woo! Can you imagine? So April 7th is the date, you all. That's the date of the runoff between Harris and Fuller. Spirit. Whew, let me settle my energy down, because this is important, because as these races go, especially as we get into red states and very, very red districts this way, tells us so much, confirms what we know is going to happen this year, and what is Trump's and the GOP their greatest fear. But they see it happening, and they're doing what they're doing anyway. So, Spirit, thank you. The runoff between Sean Harris and Clayton Fuller in April. Will Sean Harris win that runoff? Will he win? I've got death. That's a transformation. I've got lovers. I don't, as many of you know, and I've got strength. Got it. As many of you know, if you follow me on the channel, when I shuffle a deck and I get majors at the bottom of the deck after the shuffle, I always pay attention to major arcana. So, death, that's going to be tough, because we also know part of what happened in why there is a runoff is because there was a lot of splits between the Republican candidates, that voters had a lot to choose from, and so that tamped down on Fuller's numbers. So there's the choice that, clearly the choice that the voters have to make on April 7th in the runoff. And the strength card, I'm wondering if that is strength in numbers from the Republican spirit. Will there be enough Republicans who now shift to Fuller to keep that district red? Don't like that, but I gotta go for the truth. Will that district stay red? Page of Cups, Queen of we're gonna hear Marjorie come out and say some things. Queen of Swords. Is Marjorie going to actually come out and against Fuller, or is she going to help sway voters towards Harris? Five of Cups. Nah, we can't count on her for nothing. All right. Will will that district remain red then, Spirit? Will it remain red? Willing to see the truth, want to see the truth. Will that district remain red? The Ten of Swords. Ooh. Knight of Cups. The sentiment toward people, people don't like this guy Fuller, and they're really upset. Even staunch Republicans in this district are really, really upset, and they don't necessarily like this guy. And the fact that Trump has endorsed him is not necessarily helping. The Knight of Cups feels like more movement, emotionally perhaps towards Harris. Will Harris pull it out, Spirit? Will Harris pull this out? The Nine of Swords. I don't like that. There's a lot of fears about what that means, and the Eight of Cups. I can look back at it again, but I will say this. Republican sentiment in that area is as red as it is. They are definitely, because we saw that emotional component, people are definitely torn. You're talking about the staunchest of the staunch Republicans in that district. And the fact that things have changed and taken the turn that they have, they're really emotionally torn. I think we will probably see less of a turnout in general, but Sean Harris definitely has an uphill climb, and I would hope perhaps that whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene or whomever else who would be willing, more conservative people who would be willing to back Harris. If he can gain and garner enough of that vote, he stands a chance because he did get 37% to 35%. But again, that 35 for Fuller is because the Republican pool was larger and that cut back on him. So that's a question mark, but not going to give up on that, and still very exciting to see this momentum. I mean, for a Democratic candidate to get that kind of turnout in that kind of a district at all is a minor miracle. All right. Second thing I want to look at, moving along, SAVE Act. I said in my last reading on Monday, we were looking at John Thune, Trump trying to really bring the hammer down on them, saying, if you all don't pass this, I'm not going to sign any bills, la, 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 always the threats. But we understand John Thune is still saying, no, I'm not gonna arrange for a filibuster. This is not going to happen. Spirit, is the SAVE Act doomed? Is the SAVE Act ain't gonna be saved? All right, let's look at that. Is the SAVE Act doomed? Will it fail? We have the Nine of Wands. So that's going to be the continued push by Trump, the continued threats. The Ten of Wands. So it continues to build, but there's burnout. I feel like this is saying Thune has said sometimes there's just no place to go with this, and the numbers are not there. And he does not want to go the route of the filibuster. He wants to hold to the requirement of the 60 votes, and they can't get to 60 with Democrats. They're not going to be on board for that. So there's that. Will the SAVE Act go away? Be doomed? The Moon. I think so. I think it is doomed. But the backlash, the continued misrepresentation and trying to play on people's fears. There's a lot of fear here, to try and play on people's fears about fraudulent voting. Then if you don't do this, are you going to be able to trust the votes? And they are concerned, even senators like Thune or whomever, the rest of them who don't want to get on board with the SAVE Act, they are concerned that then that gives more fuel or momentum to what we see happening with Trump trying to put things in place to challenge the elections. That's the worry. The Page of Fire, exactly. The idea that pages are growing energy, combustible energy coming in fire. So it's the concern is that this is, even if they don't pass the Save Act, that's not going to stop this administration from, if anything, it's going to give them more fuel to the fire to say, because this act was not passed, you can't trust these elections. But at the end of the day, Spirit, please give me another major arcana, one way or another, to show me how this is going to go. I've got the Ace of Water, and so I don't even need my the major arcana. When I get my aces, we're on track. I think Thune is going to try and really hold strong. The only iffy thing there is that Moon, because they understand that long term, it's not even so much about the threat of from Trump not to sign any future bills, right? It's more about long term prospects and how the elections would go, because that also impacts them. If they are really going to play this long game around challenging the election results or tampering those results, and that brings me to, I hadn't really planned on looking at this, but I will very quickly. We know the DNC now, Democratic National Committee, has filed a lawsuit to force the administration's hand on saying point blank, are you planning to send ICE or other federal agents to the polls? Because we know that's been talked about as well. That was part of the plan to suppress the vote, intimidate voters. And so they've just gotten out, DNC has gotten out ahead of that and filed a lawsuit and said, essentially demanding from the administration to declare one way or another, what's the deal with you? Are you planning to send agents to the polls so that they can adequately respond? I want to see if, in fact, that lawsuit will be successful. And I'm already hearing, even if they, Wheel of Fortune, karma, destiny, the forcing their hand to come out ahead of time and be on the record in the courts whether or not they intend to do this, whether they're going to send agents to the polls. And the Sun, I think the challenge is going to be successful, at least legally. I think the DNC is going to be successful in their arguments around the use of federal agents at polling places. They're going to be successful in their lawsuit. However, that's not necessarily going to stop, because since when did this administration start really listening to the courts, right? So even if the decision is made that any attempt to do so would be illegal, and tantamount to voter suppression or voter intimidation, according to our election laws, our federal laws, they're going to, I think that's why we got the Wheel of Fortune, and notice that spider, building its web or weaving its web. They will still try and find ways to at least have the threat linger. And there's the Seven of Cups. This administration they're still going to go back and try and figure out, okay, maybe we can't be so open about it. Maybe we've got to go at it a different way. But the fact that at that point it is on the record, and there will be court orders, there will be decisions that have been made and handed down around the illegality of that. Once again, that props up the system, the legal system, to be able to challenge anything that they do come November to try and suppress the vote. All right. So between that and the what we, fingers crossed, we think is not going to go forward with the Save Act, I'm seeing that what the guidance I'm getting, and I hope you all feel the same way, is that's actually a really good development. All right. Next thing, I'm telling you, Spirit was like pow pow pow. Pam Bondi apparently has run and fled to a military base now for her housing. She says, she's getting threats. And so she's like, I'm out. I gotta go get on this military base for protection. But in the meantime, she's being called before Congress again to testify about the handling of the Epstein files. Now, we saw what happened to Kristi Noem, who got in front of Congress and just absolutely made a fool of herself. Next thing you know, she goes bye-bye. Is Pam Bondi getting closer to that point? Because at a certain level, when people become too much of a liability, we know that we don't care. There's no love. So at a certain point, if they really become a liability, will he let them go? And even though he and Pam Bondi go back, way back, apparently to the Epstein days, right? We saw some photographs of her in there with Epstein as well. So they go back in the day. Spirit, based on Pam Bondi's upcoming appearance before Congress to have to testify on the files, the Epstein files, will Frump turn on her? Will she be out of her job as well? Is she going to be replaced? Is Pam Bondi going to be replaced? We've got the Page of Cups, sentiment starting to turn that way. And we've got the Sun, success in the question of her being let go. Now, it may be just as he created some special envoy to the Betty Crocker Society or whatever it was. No shade to Betty Crocker, but you get it. Just as he came up with some whatever position to make it look a little better for Kristi Noem. Everybody knows the deal for that. I wonder if he might try and do the same thing to try and help Pam Bondi save face. But she's in trouble. She's definitely in trouble. She's going to get up there, and Spirit is confirming Ace of Swords. She's going to get up there again, like, okay, let's you talk about the 50,000 points or whatever it is in the stock market this time, with the stock market continuing to be rocked behind the Middle East situation, right? Yeah, she's in serious trouble. And the Empress, she's in serious trouble. So that's going to happen with her. Now, I'm also getting from Spirit that Bondi might try and to deflect some of the heat off of her. Watch what she does in relation to Cash Patel, you all. I think it was on Monday, this report that was supposed to be released from DHS and DHS FBI on potential risks to or heightened threats here on U.S. soil based on the Middle East situation, that the administration pulled it and said, don't release that to the states, to local law enforcement. We don't want that to get out right now. Well, lo and behold, it got leaked to the Daily Mail, right? I'm telling you, thank goodness for international media right now. We need them more than ever. But the report got leaked. And Patel is sitting there looking really bad right now because that report got leaked. And we understand that Frump was already really upset with him behind chugging those beers in Italy with the hockey team, right? So he already is on the list. Now this report got leaked and is everywhere. It's a 5-page report. You can Google it. It's everywhere. All the signs that they're saying, telling the local law enforcement to be on the lookout for heightened risks that they didn't want to get out. Is Bondi going to try and throw Patel under the bus to save herself? We have the Two of Cups. And the Wheel of Fortune comes back. Weaving the web and trying to save her butt with Frump. Two of Cups. So much of this, you still need me in relation to this, because if we're going to deal with anything, we probably need to deal with Cash first. Spirit. Is she going to go after, and the Nine of Cups? She's going to go after him. And not only that, that's somebody who's actually in Bondi's corner. I don't know who that is. None of them are really friends at this point. And it's dog eat dog. But I get the Nine of Cups feels like there's a growing sentiment that, okay, if we got to choose who to go first, Cash Patel is higher up on that list. And also in terms of value to the administration. Three of Cups. Yeah, there's already a lot of talk. Three of Cups can be a chatty card, gossip, chatty, getting together. So I think so. I think she's going to try and do that now. Try and throw Cash Patel under the bus to deflect some of the heat off of her. Because one thing we know Trump has really tried to resist doing is having a wholesale revolving door in his in this second go round. He's been really tight about I'm keeping his people and standing behind them until the 11th hour. Look how long he even allowed, Kristi Noem to get away with the crap that she did. So I think Bondi's gonna be in the hot seat for sure. Her days are numbered. I know that there are also somebody's called for impeachment articles with her. The numbers around that, I'm not so sure. I can go back and look at it a little later once we get further along the line, if in fact that looks like it's going forward. And there will be a vote on that. But this feels more internal rather than a congressional procedure right now. It looks more like for Bondi to go bye-bye, it looks more internal, coming from Trump, coming from the administration and what's happening within the administration. But Patel is definitely in trouble. All right. And so while we're talking about these folks in the administration in trouble, Hexath. Now, right now, Hexath is doing exactly what he was designed to do. He is saying stuff that just, Trump says one thing, he says another. They're still trying to come up with some sort of policy around why anything was done with Iran, why they decided to go forward and send the military and go into this war, even though Hexath calls it a war and we're going to win, and then Trump says, it's just some intervention. We're just there to try and help out temporarily. But we now also know that a report has come out. Check this out. This is from the Independent out of the UK. So we got to check our sources these days, right? A report has come out. This was towards the end of 2025. Spending. You ready for this? Hexath approved and spent $9 million on crab and lobster, $15 million on ribeyes, and also spent $100,000 for a Steinway piano for the chief of staff, for the Air Force chief of staff's home. Now that goes to explain as well. A while back, maybe even as far back as the autumn, I remember doing some readings and the spirit guides were saying there would be resistance from the military if things got ratcheted up, especially with regard to using the military in U.S. cities, because this was when a lot of stuff was happening with ICE. But just in general, military resistance to the illegality of executive orders and not wanting to go forward with that. Well, you buying a $100,000 Steinway piano for the Air Force Chief of Staff's home. What was the first measure that was used in Iran? Airstrikes. All right. So is there some buyout? Has there been some buyout? Helps explain why, as much as we've been hearing military commanders and certainly retired generals, et cetera, coming out and saying none of this makes sense. None of this is going to work out the way that they think. But yet, lo and behold, we see many of these orders being followed. $100,000 Steinway piano, maybe goes a long way to convince some folk to go along with the plan. But $9 million on some crab and lobster, $15 million on ribeyes, and you got TSA agents quitting by the droves. We understand that TSA agents, the DHS is going to hell in a handbasket, and that over 300 of them have resigned so far. That's not even counting how many, the mounting numbers of those TSA agents who are about to, as I understand it, this Friday will miss their first complete paycheck after going through what they went through last year. So they're like calling in left and right and beginning to actually resign, because it ain't even about stick it out, wait it through, and then get the back pay later. It's you're going through this for a sustained period of time. who would do it? Who would do it? All right. So I'm wondering, I think among many things, we know all of these people are going to be held accountable once things turn over and the administration and Congress changes. And that's going to happen. Is Hexath going to get brought up on financial mismanagement? We know that was also a big part of what happened with Kristi Noem, right? That $200 million advertising campaign for what? The Nine of Wands, it's building, and the Devil. Yeah. Yeah. Hell in a handbasket. I'm going to leave it at that. Hell in a handbasket. Hexath will see his day. $9 million. And you got people going without pay. You got people, no health care. Anyway, y'all don't need me to go into all of that. But really interesting to see these things come out in black and white. Just the degree to which the grift and the greed and the partying, the whole let them eat cake situation that we see going on. And it is not just Trump. It is all of them in this cabinet. All right. The last thing that I want to look at today is what happened. Matter of fact, Spirit is saying go to my Kipper deck. The Kipper deck gets a little petty, gets to the bottom of things. This phone call between Trump and Putin. And we know that, when the information came out that Putin was furnishing intelligence, U.S. intel, to Iran. And Trump apparently was like, oh, really? Oh, okay. And then on top of that, talking about lifting sanctions against Russia around oil. What? All right. So, a lot of that. And we understand, too, that Vance and Trump, who have been disrespectful, is to put it mildly, towards Zelensky, right? Now they've had to go hat in hand like, hey, can we have a few of those interceptors? Because we know that you know how to do your thing with the drones. You've been doing that for, going on 4 years now with Russia. We need your help. We don't have the interceptors. We've seen the news around that going into this, there were questions around depletion of military resources. So they've had to, in fact, tone it down a little bit. We understand that Zelensky has, in fact, as of today, from what I've read, that he has sent drones and sent his teams to teach or show how to operate the drones to Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Now, I also want to backtrack. I was seeing in a previous reading that I remember Iran came out right after everything and said, we don't want problems with our neighbors. We don't want, to fire against Saudi Arabia or Qatar or the UAE. Well, lo and behold, so I thought there was going to be sort of a coalescing where those nations in the Middle East would try and play a role to kind of keep Iran calm and de-escalate the situation. But apparently, since this new leader is emerged, the Ayatollah Khomeini's son, that's gone by the wayside. And so now we're seeing the Middle Eastern, like Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, starting to align more with European allies and Ukraine to say, listen, we got to go where it makes sense. And right now it's making more sense with them. But that's really interesting. Talk about karma. Talk about payback. The way things come, what goes around comes around. So now they're having to go to Zelensky for help. And Zelensky is standing up and doing it because he's solidifying his allied base as well. But now to the matter at hand. And the last thing I want to talk about today is Spirit. What really took place in the conversation between Trump and Putin? What was the nature of that conversation? This deck has a sense of humor. I'm putting it up in case any of you are interested. It's called the Kipperish deck by Intuitive Kev. All right, so we get at the bottom of the deck, soulmates. Okay, why not? right? The love affair between the two of them. So soulmates. So the conversation was, or at least the way Frump entered it was like, "Hey, how you doing? All right." What was the nature of that conversation? What really got said between the two of them? Endings. So it did have to do with how to find a way to, Frump realizes that he's bitten off more than he can chew. He realizes that there is no changing the regime and there is no win here. So how to end it? Thoughts on how to end it. So they went back and forth. Did Putin give him advice on how to come out of this? Did Putin give Trump advice on how to come out of Iran? Destruction. That's what's happening. And that's what will continue to happen. And a commitment. Now, this is interesting. So, talking about Trump's, first of all, not really giving a damn about the fact that Putin is furnishing Iran with intel. Okay, fine, do you? But also, I think there's a commitment around helping Russia, because by letting go of those sanctions, we're hearing Russia's starting to make money hand over fist around oil. He wanted a commitment. Putin wants the commitment in order to avoid continued destruction. He said, "Hey, you got to give me a commitment here to lighten up on sanctions so I can make some money." Am I right about that, Spirit? Is that what it was? Poverty, because we need the money, and your markets, your economy. This is Putin to Trump. Your economy is about to go in the toilet, right? The markets are zigzagging up and down, every which way, trying to just stay alive. Family. There was a let's do what we have to do so that you get out of this, save your economy, help me in my economy, with oil by lifting sanctions. Did Trump basically taco? Did he chicken out and taco with Putin and say, whatever you need, whatever you want, tell me what to do? Mature man. That's Putin. That was who the adult on the phone was, or on the call. And a change. Yeah. The change being to figure out a way to lift those sanctions and allow Putin to take, beat his chest that he's making money hand over fist. Show again that he has the upper hand whenever it comes to dealing with Trump. Two cards just came. A surprise and divinity. There's more to come out of that call, you all. I think that commitment that we saw, there was more that I think Trump promised Putin in terms of economic help. Not direct, of course he can't do it that way, but one way or another that Russia will benefit financially from this. The surprise, evil eye. I'm wondering, Spirit, is Putin gonna do something to actually further assist Iran that harms Trump or harms the U.S. boss and a health concern? Oh, well, both of them are ill. We know Putin's been on his last legs for a while as well. They recognize that about each other. And a pathway forward. They're really that's an interesting duo. You know, we started out this on this deck with the soulmate situation between the two of them. That's an interesting thing. They are commiserating with each other because both of them understand that they're on the way out, right? Politics aside, as human beings in their bodies, their health concerns, they're on the way out. So they commiserated with each other in regards to that. That's the pathway between the two of them. They commiserated. I think they may have had some conversations around their health. The boss is they both see each other. You know, you're running things there, I'm running things here. But at the end of the day, that call it was about Putin basically said, I need you to hold the line so that I can do what I need to do to make some money here, right? And Trump said, okay. Essentially, he said, okay. The destruction that we saw, I am getting, you know, the only way out is eventually he's going to taco and declare that it was victorious. But I think that's still a ways out, you all, because listening to what Hexath is saying, yeah, that's it's not going to be tomorrow, but it's going to be sooner than we think. And I can't remember what outlet it was. It was may have been the BBC or Reuters or something, but they were talking about potential scenarios for the end of this. And they said one of them could be that Trump will simply say, you know, we won. We destroyed like they did in June. We destroyed everything that they have. Nothing to worry about here. You know, we mission accomplished. But you've also got Hexath and others wanting this, needing this in order to gin up their existence, right? So that's the crossroads that Trump is going to be facing really soon. But I think based on this conversation that he had with Putin, he understands that it's going to be beneficial to him based on the destruction of the a potential destruction to the American economy and Wall Street, which we know ain't gonna tolerate this but so long, right? That ballroom, people gonna be wanting refunds for the money they spent on that ballroom, right? So that's I think it's gonna come to a head sooner rather than later. All right, you all, thank you so much for being here with me. I appreciate you. Love the comments. Please hype if you can. Trying to grow the channel, continue to give you good content here. I love my time with you. I love hearing from you. And in the meantime, chin up, right? Easier to do today based on that Georgia election. Even if Harris doesn't pull it through, that just sends such a signal about where we're going and what we're going to see happen this year. So chin up, shoulders back, come from your heart, knowing sky is above you, earth is beneath you, solid, holding you up. All right? And I'll talk to you real soon. I'll be back on Friday. Take care. Bye.